So on homework 10, we are going to be adding or subtracting rational equations, which means fractions. And so when we add fractions, we need a least common denominator. So for this one, 5 and 4 will both go into 20. So my least common denominator is going to be 20. So what I'm going to do then is, and it looks a little complicated on number 1, but it'll help for the rest of them. So I'm going to take 20 over 1 and multiply it times my first term, which is y over 5. Then I have plus. Then I'm going to take the least common denominator of 20 over 1 times the y over 4 equals, and then again, the least common denominator of 20 over 1 times 9. So each time I took the least common denominator and multiplied it times the term that was already there. So when I do this, 20 times y over 5, well, 20 over 5 is 4, and then I have the y, plus, so basically I'm just reducing, and then 4 goes into 20 5 times, so now I have plus 5y equals, and then this is 20 times 9 gives me 180. And now I'm just solving for the y. So I'm going to put my 4y plus 5y to get 9y equals 180. We divide by 9. We divide by 9. Y equals 20. Now on number 2, I have a y on bottom, a 7 on bottom, and a 7y. Well, if I use the least common denominator of 7y, y goes into 7y, 7 goes into 7y, and 7y goes into 7y. So I'm going to take my least common denominator of 7y over 1. I'm going to multiply it times the 7 over y that's already there, plus the least common denominator, which was 7 over y, or 7y over 1, times the 2 times 7 equals least common denominator of 7y over 1 times the 9 over 7y. So then I'm ready to do my canceling. This y and that y cancel. So now I have 7 times 7 is 49 plus, and then this 7 and that 7 cancel. So I've got y times 2, which would be 2y equals that 7y and that 7y cancel. So equals 9. And then I'm ready to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 49 on both sides of the equal sign. 2y equals negative 40. Divide by 2 on both sides of the equal sign. Y equals negative 20. So number 3, I only have one fraction, and the bottom of it is the letter p. So that is my least common denominator. So I'm going to take that p times the p that's already there plus p over 1 times 6 over p that's already there equals p times -7 that's already there. So there's nothing that can cancel, but I can take p times p and get p squared. And then here, this p and that p cancel, so plus 6 equals, and then p times -7 gives me -7p. And when I have that squared, I need to get my entire equation equal to 0. So I'm going to take and plus 7p on both sides of the equal sign. And I want this in the order that we need it for split the middle. So p squared plus 7p plus 6 equals 0. And now we can do split the middle, or we can do quadratic formula. I know that this is going to factor into, so I'm going to actually write it over here. So I know that that is going to factor into p plus 1 times p plus 6, because I know that 1 times 6 is 6 and 1 plus 6 is 7. So then I set each of these equal to 0 and solve for p. And so my answers are -1 and -6. And it's not an ordered pair, it's just two different answers work. Okay, number 4 is a little different because it has the binomial on bottom, x plus 1. Well, since both of them are the same, the x plus 1, that makes my least common denominator x plus 1. But I have restricted values, or excluded values. And so what we have to do is we have to take that x plus 1 equals 0 and solve it for x. And so when we do that, that means that x cannot be -1. And the reason it can't be -1 is it would make this bottom of the fraction a 0, and we can't have a 0 on the bottom of the fraction. So if we work this out and end up getting a -1, then we can't use it. So our least common denominator is x plus 1. So x plus 1 over 1 times my 11 over x plus 1 equals, least common denominator is x plus 1 over 1 times x plus 2 over x plus 1. So here my x plus 1 and x plus 1 cancel, so I have 11 equals, and then x plus 1 and x plus 1 cancel because one's on top, one's on bottom. So I'm left with 11 equals x plus 2, and then I solve for x. And x equals 9, and because that is not -1, then that is my valid answer. Okay, on number 5, I have 3 plain numbers on bottom, so I am not going to have any restricted values. And my least common denominator, I have to find something that 8 and 4 and 6 will both go into. I know that 8 will go into 16, but 4 doesn't. I know that 8 will go into 24. 4 does go into 24, and so does 6. So my least common denominator can be 24. So 24 over 1 times x over 8 equals 24 over 1 times 1 over 4 plus 24 over 1 times x over 6. So I know that 8 goes into 8 once, 8 goes into 24 3 times. So now I have 3x equals 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 24 6 times, 6 goes into 6 once, 6 goes into 24 4 times, and then I'm ready to solve for x. So I'm going to have to subtract 4x here and here, both sides of the equal sign. So this gives me negative 1x equals 6. And I can't have that negative 1, so divide by negative 1. And so x equals negative 6. On number 6, I have x as the bottom of my fraction. So x is the least common denominator. And I do have the x on bottom, so I have to take x equals 0. And so that is a restricted value. X cannot be 0. So again, I take the x over 1. Okay, so I put my least common denominator times each of the terms that are already there. So this x on top cancels this x on bottom. So I have x squared plus 3 equals, and then this x on top and that x on bottom cancel, so equals 19. I'm going to solve for x. So x squared equals 16. And then remember that the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 16 is 4 and negative 4. And neither one of those are in my excluded or restricted values, so that is my answer. Okay, again on number 7, my bottom number is an x, so that's my least common denominator. And again, my restricted value, I would put x equals 0, and so that means that x cannot be 0. So I'm going to set this problem up. Okay, so I've set everything up. And you notice here, I changed this minus to a plus right here, but I kept the 3 a negative. So we'll do our canceling. So x on top, x on bottom. So I've got x squared plus 4 plus, and then nothing here cancels. So I'm actually going to get rid of that plus. And what I've got is 3 times negative, or x times negative 3. So I have negative 3x equals, and then x on top, x on bottom. And so now I'm going to simplify. So here I've got x squared minus 3x plus 4. And now I have to distribute. So 2x minus 4. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides of the equal sign, as well as adding 4 to both sides of the equal sign. So now I have x squared minus 5x plus 8 equals, and all that cancels, so equals 0. And then I will need to, I actually think that this probably should have been a minus 4. So I'm going to make this a negative 4, which makes this a negative 4, which makes this a negative 4. Okay, I'm going to erase this. Okay, so I needed to change the problem. This actually needs to be x squared minus 4 for this to work out the way it's supposed to work out. So you may have to go back and get rid of some of that video. All right, so I'll reset it up. So I've set this up the right way using the right equation. Now I'm ready to do some canceling. So x on top, x on bottom, x squared minus 4. And then this is x times negative 3, so negative 3x equals, and then x on top, x on bottom, and this is 2 times the x, 2 times the negative 2, so 2x minus 4. And then we want this to equal 0. So I am going to subtract 2x on both sides of the equal sign and add 4 on both sides of the equal sign. And so those actually cancel, and I get x squared minus 5x equals 0. Now, I can do split the middle, but I can also factor. Well, split the middle is factoring, but I can also just factor out the greatest common factor rather than having to split the middle. So now I have x times x minus 5 equals 0. And so I can set each of those factors equal to 0. So x equals 0 and x minus 5 equals 0, and then solve. And if we go back up, remember that 0 was one of our restricted values. So that means that our only answer is 5. 0 is not a valid answer. Okay, number 8, the bottom of my fraction is 5y minus 2. So that's going to be my least common denominator. Restricted value, I'm going to take that 5y minus 2, put it equal to 0, and then solve for y. So my restricted value is 2 over 5. So y cannot be 2 over 5. All right, so we're going to set up our greatest common factors, or least common denominators. Okay, now everything is set up. So I have this 5y minus 2 times 2. Well, this has to distribute. So 10y minus 4. And then my 5y minus 2 on top, 5y minus 2 on bottom. So now I have minus 5 on top equals, and then my 5y minus 2 on top, 5y minus 2 on bottom equals 51. So now 10y minus 9 equals 51, plus 9 on both sides of the equal sign. 10y equals 60. Divide by 10, divide by 10. Okay, divide by 10, divide by 10, y equals 6. So on number 9, I have y plus 1 and 7. So the only way I can make those a least common denominator is to multiply them together. So 7 times y plus 1 is going to be my least common denominator. And so my restricted value, I'm going to take that y plus 1, set it equal to 0, and then solve. And so that means that I cannot get negative 1 as a solution. Or I can get it, but it is not a solution. So then I'll set up the problem with the least common denominators. Okay, now that I have those set up, I can do my canceling. So this y plus 1 on top, y plus 1 on bottom cancel. So I have 7 times y minus 1 equals, and then that 7 and that 7 cancel. So I have 2 times y plus 1. So now I'll have 7y minus 7 equals 2y plus 2. And I want to solve for y. So I will subtract 2y on both sides of the equal sign. Leaves me 5y minus 7 equals 2. And then I will add 7 on both sides of the equal sign. 5y equals 9. Divide by 5, divide by 5, y equals 9 over 5, which we weren't allowed to get negative 1, so we're good. Okay, then the last one, of course, is a word problem. The average cost of producing X game disks for a computer is given by the function c of x equals 3.3 plus 2100 over x. Find the number of game disks that must be produced for the average cost to be $3.90. Okay, the only terms that we have on the bottom of the fraction are x, so that's my least common denominator. The only thing that the x or that the x cannot be is 0. So we are going to set up our equation. So the c of x is $3.90 equals the 3.3 plus 2100 plus 2100 over x. So that's where I got the greatest common factor, or the least common denominator. So now I'm going to set it up. Okay, so now I'm ready to simplify. So x times $3.90 would be $3.90 x equals, and then I've got x times 3.3, so 3.3x plus, and then this x cancels, that x cancels, 2,100. I'm going to solve for x, so I'm going to subtract 3x on both sides of the equal sign, or 3.3x. So this is going to give me 0.6x equals 2,100. And then I'm going to divide by 0.6, divide by 0.6. And so x will equal 3,500.